Hello everyone, this is Strawberry Shorty here with a rant video on Layton's mystery journey, Catriel and the Millionaire's Conspiracy. So, let me just start off by saying that I am a big fan of the Professor Layton series. I had actually put off playing these spin-offs for a while, despite having them. Like, this one in particular, I had the iPad version, like I bought that, and then I also got the DS version as a gift, and it's like still sealed, brand new in the packaging. And then I got the Switch version as a gift as well, and finally got around to playing that. And I don't know all of the differences. I will say that I believe the Switch version has all of the DLC costumes unlocked, while I believe in like the DS version at least you have to pay for them. And I think most of the puzzles in the Switch version are also different. So yeah. Anyway, I didn't really like this game much. Like the characters are not super memorable to me. They weren't super enjoyable. Like the new main character, Catriel, I can't say I hated her, but I didn't really like her. She's a little bit like, I don't know the word for it, like selfish. Like she's got this assistant named Ernest who totally has a crush on her, but she's not actually, it doesn't feel like she's actually oblivious. It feels like she's intentionally oblivious. Like she'll purposefully pretend she didn't hear him when he, asks her out on a date. And it's not like he's being like creepy or obnoxious. Like he's being very genuine. So like just stuff like that. I don't know. Like it just wasn't super into her. And there's also a talking dog, which I didn't hate the dog character either, but well, we'll get to him. He's, yeah. So where do I even start with this? I guess before I talk about story, I'll talk about gameplay, because one of the biggest things of Professor Layton is, of course, the puzzles. And here, the puzzles were horrible. And like I said, keep in mind that the Switch version has different puzzles from the DS version. The puzzles that I encountered, like, I liked the art for them. That's about the only credit I will give. Most of these puzzles just flat out sucked. Like, there were some that weren't even puzzles. Like, there's one where you have to like line up a particular object, and there's several variations of puzzles that involve having to line something up. But like, while one version has a move limit and another version has like bad things you can accidentally line up, there's some puzzles where you just line things up and there's nothing else, and it's like, this isn't even a puzzle. There are puzzles that are worded really, really poorly, and like you have to read some of these extra carefully. And sometimes even if you read them, you will misunderstand. Like I got like one of the later puzzles in the game is like you have this 5x5 grid, and you have to line stuff up in it. And you want to have one of each thing in each line, but no duplicates. And problem is that the grid isn't exactly a 5x5 grid, and it's so confusing. So yeah, like I ended up hating most of these puzzles. I often found myself just, like, if it was a multiple choice one, just guessing or looking up answers or just using all of the hints because I did not want to be bothered. And this is probably the first Professor Layton game where I did not complete all the puzzles. Like, I did every single puzzle in the story, but like I did not bother with the extra puzzles because I just didn't want to. Some of them are so obnoxious and so confusing that I don't know how you'd ever figure out the solutions. And it's just like, I just can't be bothered. Only ones I think I really like I remember liking the fruit one. Fruit one was my favorite. The one where you had to like have different like lines of fruit, and there had to be like two of each one in each line. That kind of puzzle is fun. But anyway, another problem with the puzzles, the memo pad. And this is probably specific to the Switch version. It makes me wish I had actually played the DS version instead. So if you want to bring up the memo, it is an overlay on the screen, which is nice. But in order to bring it up, you have to go into a menu. And I personally think that the the memo thing should just be a click away. It's just like you hit like a little menu icon in the corner and it pops up. But no, you have to go into a menu, and the memo is near the bottom, and it's also up there with quit and try again. And one of the other problems with the Switch version is you have two cursors. One is this little blue dot that you control with the Switch joysticks, and then there's the little thumb pointing, the glove pointing, that's like, oh hey, you want to go here? And so you move the blue dot cursor over something, and then eventually the pointer thing will follow it. And there's a little bit too much of a delay, so sometimes you'll move real fast and like click, and it won't click right away, so you can end up clicking on the wrong thing. And in this menu in particular, it's a problem, because if you accidentally click on try again, there is no, oh hey, are you sure? It just automatically resets the puzzle. And if you'd been making progress in said puzzle, that is extremely annoying. But getting to the memo feature itself, there's no stylus. And you don't really think about how much the absence of a stylus is going to bother you. I don't know if it's just because I'm used to the Professor Layton games where you used the stylus, but trying to use my finger to make notes or trying to use the joystick and the A button was terrible. I hated it so much. And this was probably one of the biggest things that made me not want to even try for certain puzzles, was just not being able to make normal memos. Like, it's such a small feature, you never really think about how important it actually is, but just not being able to use it normally was maddening. And they have this this sort of like not quite a jigsaw puzzle thing when you're solving cases, where you get like there's like 6 or so clues per case, and each clue is a piece, and you got to put the piece on an image, and it's very simple. I don't know why this is a thing. And a lot of times the clues you get don't even really make much sense. Like, some of them are just really kind of dumb. But yeah, so you put them all together and then you solve the case. And unlike the Professor Layton games, the Professor Layton games typically have an overarching story with a bunch of mysteries that you solve as you go along. Layton's Mystery Journey, on the other hand, is pretty much a bunch of self-contained cases. And there really isn't any kind of overarching story. And I think that honestly hurts it. Like, I guess at this point we should start talking about the story. Like, I do want to go kind of on a case-by-case basis to kind of explain the problems that I have with this game. So the basic setup is just, you have Catriel. Years and years and years ago, her father, Professor Layton, suddenly went missing. She wants to find him, so she opens her own detective agency. She's got a guy named Ernest who has a crush on her as an assistant, and her first case is this talking dog with amnesia who's pretty sure he is not actually a dog, wants her to figure out who he is. And that's your basic setup. And I'll just say right now, if you're curious as to who Shirl the dog is, you will never find that out. At the very least, it is not addressed in this game. Maybe they thought there would be a sequel or something. I know there is a sequel anime, but I have not read anything that indicates that the anime reveals Shirl's identity either. Like, I haven't watched it yet, but I did look at Shirl's profile because I wanted to at least like on his on the Layton Wikia to see if at least if we would learn his identity there. But it doesn't seem like we do, but we'll find out anyway. I'll watch it eventually and do a video on it. But so yeah, that was really kind of frustrating because that's like the one kind of like core mystery that's introduced at the start of the game, and we don't even try to find out who he is. And kind of along the same lines, there's no progress made on Professor Layton's disappearance either, like none. We don't actually look for him or learn anything about where he went. And I know the anime does address that one, but it's still really weird. Also, kind of disturbing that the puzzle he left behind for his daughter is like, oh, by the way, you're adopted. Like, if you're not my daughter, who are you? Like, what the frick kind of final puzzle message is that? Like, first of all, why would you tell your kid she's not actually your kid, like adopted or not? But then why would you tell her that in a puzzle? Like, I know puzzles are how we do things in the Layton universe, but that just seems really messed up. But yeah, so anyway, no progress is made on either of those things. And I also should probably throw out one of the biggest issues with this game is there's not really any returning characters. Like there's three familiar faces, and they are all NPC characters from the previous games. And when I say NPCs, I mean like really minor characters. You will not see any big names here, and it doesn't really make sense. Like, honestly, part of the thing with this is like, why does this star Catriel? Like, because she kind of looks like Flora. Like, they could easily made Flora the protagonist. You know, let Flora actually do something for once. Flora gets sidelined in everything. She's not even in this. And it's super weird. Like, where are all these people that were close to Professor Layton? Like, he went missing, and it's just Catriel. Like, where are all the other characters? Like, I think Luke is addressed in the anime, but like, why wouldn't Flora be checking in with Catriel or Chelmy or Barton or somebody? But no one. And it just feels so separate from the main games that, like, as a Layton fan, that's really disappointing. But anyway, we're getting a little sidetracked. So back to the story. So case one has one of the hands of Big Ben has gone missing, and Catriel is asked to help find it. And this is one of the cases, because every case in this has pretty much one of two things. It's either so obvious it's frustrating, or there's no way in a million years you would ever figure this out. And this is the latter, because the solution is like the hand got like broken or something, and so they replaced the hand of Big Ben with like a wafer, because the dude who broke it has a brother who's a baker, and so they baked a fake hand of Big Ben and put it on the clock, but then it rained, and so the wafer got washed away and left apparently no traces. And yeah, that's incredibly stupid, and no one would ever think of that. And like, yeah, the Layton games are known for having kind of nonsensical solutions, but this was just nonsensical in a stupid way. Like, at least the nonsensical solutions in Layton games still end up feeling satisfying in some way, or exciting. Here it's just like, that was so stupid. Like, how would you even get a cake or wafer to like stick to the clock face? Is that even possible? I'm not familiar with wafers. It just seems super strange. And like, I don't know, could they have not lied in a more convincing way? Like, just, oh, we took it down to polish it or something. I don't know. Like, I don't know that baking a cake was the solution that was needed here. And then case two, you got a murder has been committed, a murder-suicide. 2 people have died and there's no bodies. And that might sound a little exciting at first, but it's apparent about 2 seconds in that these 2 did not actually die, and they staged the whole thing to make a festival more exciting. And the mayor turns out to be behind it. And it's like, you know, I get that you want to have this festival be more successful, but a murder-suicide? Like, that's, like, I don't know about you, but if I found out a murder-suicide happened at a festival in town, I'd kind of want to stay away. But no, it was a big success, and now everyone wants to go to the festival. And it's really messed up. Like, yeah, it was just weird. And it's a shame, because I felt like they could have had a really interesting setup with, because the whole murder-suicide thing is like something connected to something that happened in the past. Because that's why the festival was apparently created, was there was a murder-suicide, so it's like, hey, let's make a festival built around that. Anyway, very strange. And then we go to a movie theater, and the final scene of the movie has been stolen. And these thefts are getting more and more Carmen Sandiego-ish as we go on. And there's a lot of red herrings. This is another one where, like the first case, you would never freaking figure this out. So, I don't even want to recount this one. This is so stupid and gross. But okay, so this is in the time period where like projectors and whatnot. So the the dude who is working in the projection room first does not actually care about the films. He just cares about his precious machines that play the films. He also has a bird that he lets fly around the room with his beloved machines and the films, which just really seems like a bad idea. But so the bird goes the bathroom on the reel of film, and though he could have just cleaned the film off, this guy cares for his machines so much that the idea of this film that had been dirtied going through them is too much for him, so he just cuts part of the film out, potentially ruining someone's career. And, like, look, I'm a germaphobe. I relate to how this man feels, but at the same time, that's not an okay thing to do. Like, you have a job, and he doesn't apparently get fired either. And he's still allowed to keep his bird in, and like, this is a dumb solution. No one would figure this out. It's not satisfying. And then, like, the whole thing, there was like a whole red herring about, like, the editor might have did it because the director wasn't satisfied with the kiss. And so the actual, like, scene, the satisfying kiss scene that they put in is right as the two are about to kiss, it cuts to a different couple kissing, and it's the director and his wife when they were young, and it's like, oh, this is so much better because it's a real true love kiss. And it's just like, except that that's clearly two different people, and anyone watching this movie will see that. But yeah, so another dumb, unsatisfying conclusion. Then you got a case where you're helping a woman find her missing pet. That's totally a cat. Really, it's a cat. We're definitely looking for a cat, because of course she would have a cat because there's all this cat stuff around. And it's obvious about 2 seconds in that her pet is not a cat. You don't know what it is, but it is definitely not a cat. But it's still treated like this big reveal when it turns out to be something entirely different. And again, yeah, like, all of the clues are so obvious. Like, oh yeah, there's a picture of the cat right over there, and it's like a picture of the pet right over there, and they go over, and it's like there's a big picture of a cat on the wall, but there's like a bunch of pictures under it that you can't see what's on them, and it's like, that one of those is a picture of the actual pet. You got a haunted mansion where you're trying to figure out what's behind it. And I was hopeful that with that one, because that was one of the last ones I played, because you don't have to play like 4 of them, you don't have to play in order. So I thought that one could potentially be interesting, but no, it all turns out to be a prank from the girl who hired you because she's lonely. Heaven forbid she join a club. Instead, she has all these weird ghost things going on, and keeps having people come in to try and solve them. But, like, I feel like doing all this ghost stuff would just kind of make people not want to be there. And, like, I feel like you could also come up with more, like, believable reasons for people to come to your house. I don't know. It was really, really stupid. And then you have one where a bank vault with a giant fan, a bunch of money disappeared from it. And this is another one where it's really obvious there's going to be a twist, and it's probably going to involve that fan. And again, you have to find like 6 more clues before it reveals that the money was just sucked up through the fan and dispensed all over London. Which you'd think you'd have some kind of failsafe against that, especially when you know the fan is acting up. And you have a giant fan, so like even if the fan is working as expected, that money would have still gone flying. So, yeah. And then you have a case where you're trying to find a masked superhero who has gone missing. And the identity of the masked superhero is kind of painfully obvious, but again, it's still treated like a reveal. Pretty much the only good thing about that case was that the baby was kind of cute, just seeing the character interact with the little baby. But yeah, it's like, it's not surprising. Like, none of this is really surprising. Then you have a case where a big statue gets stolen off a ship. And, well, this is one where you would never have figured out what was going on. And it turns out that the whole crew was in on it because they wanted to buy back their old ship, which they were super attached to. And I don't know how they figured they were gonna sell the giant gold statue or lift it off because they hid it under the boat. And I don't know how they thought they were gonna lift that up and move it and sell it with no one noticing, especially since the person they stole it from was really rich and could have keep eyes out on it. But they did that. And again, it's a really weird problem. But at least these guys, the crew, comes across as kind of sympathetic. Also, I gotta throw out here, did anyone else think that the captain just had his eyes closed 24/7? Like, I kept not realizing that those tiny little dots were his eyes. But anyway, so at least the villains here, sort of villains, are kind of sympathetic. We'll get back to why that's important in a few more cases. So then we have a case where we try to help the Inspector Hastings, he's forgot his wife's birthday, and that's not a mystery. And like 2 seconds in, you run into the wife, and she's like, "Oh, I just wanted to spend some time with my husband." So I'm sure you can already figure out how this case is going to end, with the realization that the inspector needs to spend more time with his wife. And you have a flashback case where you learn how Ernest met Catriel, and the dog is not really in this at all. In this case, is kind of ties into the sympathetic villain thing. So Ernest is accused of stealing some super important research papers from this. This is like his first day at the university, and he's super excited and he wants to work with this professor, but the professor's papers get stolen, and the professor believes that Ernest has done it. And like they're telling Ernest he's going to go to jail, he could be expelled, his career could be ruined, his reputation could be ruined, he could be charged money because this was like a super important paper. Just all this terrible stuff is happening to Ernest. So it turns out that the culprit was actually the professor. The professor didn't have anything to write, and so he destroyed the paper and then blamed Ernest for stealing it. And this is horrible. This is a horrible thing to do, especially as an educator and over a research paper. Like, you could have just told people it wasn't done. Or even if you wanted to fake it being stolen, you didn't have to let Ernest take the fall. Like, that's just, it's not right. And they all forgive him way too easily. There's no consequences. And this is a trend that continues in the next case, where Catriel is accused of murder. And it turns out that the death was accidental. And they introduce a new inspector character who's really aggressively claiming that she did it, and it basically implies he's gonna like force a confession out of her if he brings her in. And it turns out that he found the victim right after she died and messed with evidence to get Catriel convicted, because he has a rivalry with Inspector Hastings, and he doesn't like that Hastings is getting help from Catriel to solve cases. And this is another case where it's made clear he's going to be reprimanded in some way, but everyone acts like he's super sympathetic, and they talk about like, oh, how he tried to resuscitate the woman when he found her. But it's like, you falsified evidence to get an innocent girl sent to prison for murder, maybe even executed for murder. Like, that is not something to be taken lightly. And he doesn't even lose his job, apparently. And it's just, like, this is not a sympathetic character, like, not even remotely. He's actually, like, a huge jerk, you know? And then you have the final case where, basically turns out that, Ernest is actually the, grandson of some rich dude who lost all his money, and he blames the, rich characters you met before for it, and was trying to steal all their fortunes. There's no foreshadowing to any of this. The ending is kind of nice, where like he learns that he was wrong, you know, the what he thought happened hadn't actually happened, but somehow we're supposed to believe that the rich people were looking for him and they couldn't find him somehow, even though like his mom was hospitalized, and you'd think that would be an easy way to find them. It's not very believable, and like I said, there's no foreshadowing, and yeah, it's just not really a satisfying twist at all. And the moment where we accuse Ernest and we're like, oh yeah, it's you, is not even animated. Like, I don't know why that's not animated, but the bird reveal in the theater case is animated. So yeah, and that is the last case of the game, and just nothing really happened. The big twist, there was no foreshadowing. Like, it's not an exciting twist, it's not an interesting twist, nothing comes of it. I loved how they were talking about arresting Ernest initially, like Hastings was saying that, and it's like, what are you going to arrest him for? He didn't technically do anything. Like, they willingly agreed to play this game to lose their fortunes, and it's like, oh, well, these contracts are null and void, and it's like, why are they null and void? I don't actually think that they are, and it's never explained why, but yeah, so that was a bit of a rambly rant, but it's kind of what these videos are about. So yeah, like, story-wise, this game was a total disappointment. None of the cases were good or interesting. They were all either way too obvious or just ridiculous. The characters were not memorable. Too many villains were they tried to portray too many of the villains as sympathetic when they weren't. Like, the most sympathetic villains were the crew of the ship. Like, these people, the inspector and the professor dude, they are not sympathetic. Ernest is sort of sympathetic, but like, I don't know that he was really a villain. He didn't really do anything all that evil. Although, like, his mom apparently wanted to give him the strength to go on, so she wanted to give him motivation. So she's like, yeah, Ernest, you go get that revenge. Even though she knew that the rich people hadn't actually done the thing that he thought they did, she just let him stew in rage and hatred. So, I mean, the mom had good intentions, but boy did she mess up. And just, oh my gosh, this game frustrated me more than I can convey in this video. It's one of the reasons why this ended up being a rant instead of a normal review. And like some people will like say that, you know, that they don't hate the game and it's not that bad, and they don't like people criticizing it that much and acting like it's the worst thing ever. And it's like, it's not the worst thing ever. But as a Professor Layton game, I definitely think it is inferior to the other titles. But even as a standalone title, like, they don't really do enough with the characters and plot to draw you in, and the puzzles are so freaking confusing. And like, at times this feels almost like a kid's game. Like, some of the solutions to some of the puzzles are so obvious. I mean, not the puzzles, the mysteries are so obvious that, like, you'd think they were intending for this to be for a kid. But then, like, the puzzles are so confusing at times, it's like there's no way this is for a child. Oh, I guess I should address the extras. The extras also suck. Like, not so much the they have the they bring back the 3 like mini game type things you can get. You got one where you have to move the dog towards a goal, and there's like buttons you can press to make blocks go up and down, and I didn't actually like that one. That was just kind of annoying to try to figure out the exact button presses. They have a cooking one where you try to come up with the ideal meal for various characters. That one had some promise, but sometimes the characters won't be clear enough with what they want or don't want. And same thing with, like, you can interview like 2 people to get like hints, but like they'll be like, oh, this character really likes eggs, and you think that means, okay, so as many egg dishes as possible, but that's not actually what that means. And it gets really freaking confusing, and like, I had to look up the answers for some of them. They also have one where you have to like arrange jewelry in a store to make people buy certain things. That was probably the most enjoyable one. I only had to use a guide for like the last one. But when I talk about extras, I'm mostly talking about the actual bonuses, which every Layton game has. And they have like a Layton museum where you can buy stuff that you only know it's related to the previous Layton games. It turns out to just be stills from the anime cutscenes from each game, telling you a little bit about the story. Like, oh, Layton and Luke enter a strange little village, and it'll have like a screen cap from the first game. And it's like, what even is this? Like, there's nothing to it. Like, if you've already played the games, you're not getting anything from that. The character profiles you can unlock are similarly kind of bland. You don't really learn much that's interesting, and they don't, unlike the previous games, they don't have profiles for the puzzle people. Because I thought the puzzle people were the most interesting characters. At least they're doing stuff. Yeah, like, there really wasn't much else for bonuses. Like, they had like 4 rooms that had like 4 extra puzzles. But I ended up not liking those because, like, I started one puzzle and then realized it was this bunny hopping puzzle that I hate. And you can't try those puzzles again unless you actually go back to the little bonus room. Like, they'll show up in your puzzle index, but you cannot check them out, which I think is, you know, kind of lame. There's also daily puzzles, but if you're getting the game at this point, you'll just probably download them all at once. If you log in daily, you'll also get these this fashion currency, which you can use to buy outfits for Catriel, and the dog has a few outfits. Ernest doesn't get any outfits though. Um, I don't dislike this mechanic, especially since at least you don't have to pay real money, which like I said, I think you have to do in the DS version. But Cheryl's outfits are too expensive. So they're like 15 fashion farthings each, and I like Catriel's outfits. I do think they have too many palette swaps, but whatever. Probably the best part of the game was just dressing Catriel up in different outfits. That was like the only thing in this game I cared about. But yeah, so I think I've pretty much said all I need to say, at least that I can think of. But yeah, this was not. This is just such a disappointing game. It made me so angry when I was playing it. Like, again, I don't think this video conveys that anywhere near enough. But I will watch and review the anime. I hope it's good in some way. So that's all I've got to say now. For now, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.